This week on Christian World News, a monster hurricane ravages Haiti and the Caribbean before turning on the U.S. Now Christian ministries are ready to help the hurting.
Plus, are China's Christians facing another crackdown? They say they're prepared for the worst.
Coming to Alaska is like going to a foreign country. It takes 2 days of travel often to get out to the villages. You get there and they keep their old language.
And we'll show you the challenges missionaries face in Alaska's remote villages and the heights some will go to overcome them.
여러분 안녕하십니까? 크리스천 월드뉴스입니다. 얼마 전 매서운 허리케인이 카리브해를 강타했는데요. 아이티의 마을이 또다시 피해를 입었다고 합니다. 첫 소식입니다.
The Category 4 storm mauled Haiti with 140-mile-an-hour winds that leveled entire towns with drenching rains that brought massive flooding. Hundreds are known to be dead, and that number is climbing every day. More than 300,000 people are living in shelters.
허리케인은 미국을 향해 북상했는데요. 이 플로리다 해안을 거슬러 올라오는 허리케인의 영향력은 어느 정도일까요? 함께 보시죠.
Hurricane Matthew skirted Florida's east coast, packing 125-mile-per-hour wind gusts and sustained winds of 70 miles per hour. Miami and southern Florida escaped a direct hit, with only minor damage reported. As the storm approached Florida early this morning, it was located further north up the coast, just 45 miles east of Melbourne. The state's leaders made clear this powerful hurricane was a deadly danger.
Unfortunately, this is going to kill people.
Governor Rick Scott ordered an evacuation of 1.5 million Floridians living along the eastern coast. Tempers flared among some people as they tried to gas up before getting out.
I saw two guys fighting at a gas station yesterday. Yeah, actually throwing punches.
Those who stayed behind emptied store shelves, and Disney World closed for only the fourth time in its history. And thousands of travelers were stuck as flights were canceled at airports in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Orlando. CBN News anchor John Jessup is in Florida near Cocoa Beach.
As you can see, though, it's still a strong system packing heavy bands of rain and often strong wind gusts. Even though the storm's path has shifted, people are still being urged to stay indoors and off the roads. Countywide curfews went into effect late Thursday and last into Saturday morning, all designed to keep people indoors and off the roads.
Jessup reports the National Hurricane Center says storm surge and destruction will make places along the coast uninhabitable for weeks, possibly months. That's what the storm did as it devastated parts of southern Haiti, leaving thousands homeless and more than 500 people dead.
The entire place is destroyed. Nothing was spared. Nothing. All the trees were destroyed, ripped off. We don't have anything to help us survive.
Operation Blessing has teams prepared to rebuild homes and provide clean drinking water to affected residents.
Even before the storm, we started preparing by purchasing building materials to help fix people's homes immediately. We've had our chlorine manufacturing machine operating 24/7 since about three or 4 days ago to stock up on chlorine.
Operation Blessing is staging relief in central Florida and is ready to move into those areas as needed. OB volunteers will be serving up hot meals, providing food, water, and other essentials. Operation Blessing Vice President Jody Geddes says, in the long run, the CBN Relief Organization will help the hurricane victims rebuild.
We focus on the folks that still have a home, but maybe it's completely flooded and it needs to be rebuilt. And so what we do is we go in and help them take those first steps, recover their belongings, gut the home, get it down to the studs so that they can take those first steps of rebuilding.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
네, 피해를 당한 주민들을 위해 우리도 함께 기도해야겠습니다. 한편 미국에서는 대선 후보들 간의 경쟁이 계속해서 치열하게 이루어지고 있는데요. 미국 공화당 대선 후보인 도널드 트럼프를 지지하는 부통령 후보 마이크 펜스에 대해서는 아마 모르시는 분들이 더 많지 않을까 싶습니다. 마이크 펜스와의 독점 인터뷰를 통해 그가 왜 트럼프를 지지하는지 들어봤습니다. 성경에서 이야기하는 투표의 중요성에 대해서도 이야기를 들어보시죠.
In this crucial battleground state of Pennsylvania, Mike Pence makes his best pitch.
America needs to be strong. And when Donald Trump becomes president of the United States, we will lead with American strength on the world stage once again.
With a month before Election Day, Mike Pence and the Trump campaign have some hard work ahead of them. Pence tells CBN News that they're not just fighting against the Clinton-Kaine ticket.
Do you believe that the media, the mainstream media in this country, wants Hillary Clinton as the next president of the United States?
I got to tell you, David, it's been amazing to me. I've always been aware of liberal media bias in the course of my career, but I have to tell you, since I joined this campaign, it's like 2 on 1 every day, with the mainstream national media doing half of Hillary Clinton's work for her every day.
So Pence says they will need to work harder and go straight to the voters, especially in blue states like Pennsylvania, where they might change some minds.
I think Trump has good intentions, but sometimes it gets misconstrued in the back and forth. But Pence was very good at laying out more of a vision and what the intentions are behind the rhetoric. So I think, yes, in some ways, I do believe that. He helps to calm the voters that aren't quite as easy.
Between now and November 8th, you're going to see Mike Pence at a lot of these rallies, like right here in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. There are a high number of white, blue-collar voters, and those are exactly the voters that Donald Trump and Mike Pence need to show up on Election Day. And they work to convince evangelicals that Trump can be trusted on issues important to them.
When it comes to issues like the sanctity of life, I couldn't be more proud to be standing with Donald Trump, the pro-life candidate for president of the United States in this race.
He would be a pro-life president.
I can assure you we have talked. I have heard him in public. I have heard him in private. Donald Trump is committed to the sanctity of life.
Another concern is whether conservative evangelicals will show up on Election Day. He has some biblical advice for the flock.
And I truly do believe that part of how we submit to the authorities that are over us in that biblical admonition is for us to participate, to be informed. However you vote is your choice.
Whatever the outcome, Pence believes the country needs a spiritual jolt.
It's an important time for us to pray. And I believe what's always been true is still true today, that if his people who are called by his name will humble themselves and pray, that he'll again hear from heaven and he'll heal our land.
David Brody, CBN News in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania.
박해받는 교회들을 섬기는 한 단체가 이슬람 신성모독 혐의로 사형 선고를 받은 파키스탄 출신의 기독교인 아시아 비비를 위해 기도를 요청했습니다.
Christian Solidarity Worldwide is encouraging supporters to join in a 24/7 prayer event on October 12th. Bibi, you'll recall, is facing her final appeal of the death penalty next week. Convicted of blasphemy against Islam, she was sentenced to death in 2010. She's already gone through a number of unsuccessful appeals.
중국에서는 당국에 의해 새로운 법안이 도입되면서 현지 교회들이 긴장하고 있습니다. 중국 내 기독교인들의 신앙생활에 걸림돌이 될 수도 있다고 하는데요. 중국 내 복음 확산은 앞으로 어떻게 될지 중국 정보원을 통해 자세한 내용 들어봤습니다.
Do these new laws signal a crackdown on Chinese Christians?
Well, they certainly are in line with what we've been seeing overall in China the last couple of years, which is a general tightening overall in society. And so in that sense, the laws are certainly not unexpected at all. In fact, many have been waiting and wondering when the government was going to get around to actually implementing further regulations in the area of religion.
And to that point, is this specifically targeting Christians, or are they also concerned about Muslims, Tibetans, Buddhists, other religious groups?
There are provisions in the new regulations that deal specifically with extremism and terrorism. And so those would be seen as probably directed more at some of the groups you just mentioned. There are other provisions, however, for example, dealing with unregistered meetings and also internet activities that seem to be more directed towards the Christians in China.
Why is the government, Brent, so concerned about Christians? Do they view, for example, Christians as a threat?
There is a long history, of course, of the Christians in China and Christianity in China being associated with Western powers. And there are still those in the government today that believe that Christianity is being used by the West to try to infiltrate China. And so in these new regulations, there are things that specifically mention foreign infiltration. And I think that's what they're most concerned about, is the influence of the West as they see it happening through the church.
Isn't there a greater dialogue between the underground church and the authorities to help better understand each other?
There certainly has been. And in that sense, the new regulations are a big disappointment, because a year ago, representatives of the central government actually met with house church leaders and talked about what they were doing. And there was a sense at that time that there was a bit more understanding being developed. Now these new regulations show up, and it seems like we're just back to where we were before.
How do they think the government is going to go about enforcing these new regulations?
It's very problematic. You've got groups meeting in the cities now unofficially of 100 or more members who meet regularly on a Sunday. And if you suddenly try to limit them from doing that, they will meet as families in smaller groups elsewhere in the city. And so you'll just end up having more groups meeting, which means more work for the government to try to keep track of all the groups that continue to meet. And so the enforcement of this is, I think, very problematic.
Brent, is God still moving in China?
God is moving in China in incredible ways. And I think the example of the urban church today is really a testimony of what God has been doing. You've got these urban house churches sprouting up in cities across China. They're very out there. They're very open about what they're doing. They have a burden to be involved in helping their society. And many of them are talking about sending missionaries beyond China's borders.
Brent Fulton of China Source, a keen watcher of all things China. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast.
Thank you, George.
알래스카는 아마도 미국에서 가장 외지고 험한 땅일 텐데요. 겨울에는 얼음, 여름에는 진흙으로 뒤덮인 이 광활한 야생의 땅에서 복음을 전하는 선교사들이 있습니다. 그들의 삶과 사역은 분명 쉽지만은 않을 텐데요. 이들을 돕는 사역단체가 있다고 합니다. 함께 만나보시죠.
Alaska is by far the largest state in the nation, and much of it is land where no one can live.
You're looking at a state that's more than twice the size of Texas, that has fewer roads than the smallest state in the country.
There are nearly 225 remote villages here, accessible only by boat or how we're traveling.
Although missionaries and church planners first traveled to Alaska in the late 1800s, few indigenous evangelical churches exist today. As a result, international Christian organizations continue to send missionaries to reach people in these remote areas.
Coming to Alaska is like going to a foreign country. It takes 2 days of travel often to get out to the villages. You get there and they keep their old language. It's like being in another country.
Unfortunately, these missionaries are often unprepared, undersupported, and overwhelmed by the challenges of living in remote Alaska.
They come trained for that position, and what they're not prepared for is the isolation.
Mike and Renata Hazemer work with Arctic Barnabas, a ministry that steps in and cares for those who come to share the gospel.
Our mission in 2 words is strengthen and encourage. We want to strengthen and encourage those pastors and missionaries and ministry families that are out in the remote villages so that they can be effective disciplers and evangelists on the front lines.
They offer vital support and encouragement and have the means to reach these missionaries in even the most remote villages.
Our biggest goal is to simply come alongside them, strengthen them, encourage them, have fellowship with them. But sometimes our foot in the door is a project of helping them with something.
In this village, an indigenous pastor will lead the church, but not until the parsonage receives some much-needed renovations.
This laminate flooring has lifted here, and that's partly because of the high humidity in here.
Faced with the delay, church elders called Arctic Barnabas. A team worked with the elders to identify the repairs needed, addressing mold, poor insulation, and other issues often caused by the extreme weather in the bush.
How do you focus on doing ministry when living conditions are your primary focus? You can't do it.
Ed Denard and his wife Barb moved to Bethel, Alaska 4 years ago to work with the Alaska Bible Seminary. After visiting since 2006, they thought they understood the native culture. But living there is a bigger challenge than expected.
It's hard to, like my board of directors is all Yupik. My board meetings are in Yupik. And then they shift to English when they need information from me, or we're in a dialogue back and forth, but their discussion is in Yupik.
For me, aside from missing my family, it's the inability sometimes to get what I need.
For Ed and Barb, encouragement from Arctic Barnabas, whether it's a card or even a surprise delivery, matters most.
Well, the watermelon story is pretty special because, you know, it was just kind of an aside that we had made a comment to Mike one day that, you know, how much we missed that.
In Bethel, a watermelon can cost $50, a price Ed and Barb couldn't justify. Michael's next visit answered the need.
It just shows that when we're talking and sharing whatever it might be, they are listening.
Arctic Barnabas also sends out a women's magazine, a newsletter, and host retreats for the missionary families. Michael and Renata recently went even further, building a new home with enough space for missionary families to come and stay, whether they're recovering from a medical procedure or just needing to rest and re-energize. Through these divine connections, pastors and their families not only survive, but thrive in Alaska's remote villages. And as they thrive, so does the church. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Kenai, Alaska.
이스라엘 고고학자들이 히스기야 왕의 유물을 발견했다고 합니다. 히스기야 왕이 이스라엘 땅에서 산당과 우상을 파괴했다는 성경의 말씀을 뒷받침하는 증거라고 하네요.
This latest discovery by Israeli archaeologists goes back to the First Temple period, about 800 BC. They say it appears to parallel the Bible from the time of King Hezekiah. Hezekiah reigned 29 years here in Jerusalem, and Scripture says he did what was right in the sight of the Lord, so that there was no king like him after him in Judah. But Hezekiah had trouble in his kingdom. This gate shrine was uncovered during recent excavations in the Tel Lachish National Park of central Israel.
The city gate in the biblical period, it's something that a place that everything is going on inside.
Archaeologist Sa'ar Ganor said ancient Lachish was an important city, second only to Jerusalem.
Closing to the wall, we have a lot of benches with a pilaster, with a white pilaster, with armrest that people can sit.
Elders, judges, and kings would have sat here in the administrative headquarters. Scoops, jars, and handles also point to the royal and administrative nature of the gate.
We found a lot of jars that call Lamelech jars. It means belong to the king.
Other discoveries indicate the presence of cults and that Hezekiah dealt harshly with them. That evidence included 2 horned altars with the horns cut off. 2 Kings 18:4 reads, King Hezekiah removed the high places, smashed the sacred stones, and cut down the Asherah poles. Archaeologists also talked of a significant and somewhat humorous sign of the times.
A special find that we have in this place, we have the toilet. It's a cube with a hole in the middle.
Also in 2 Kings, Scripture says Jehu broke down the sacred pillar and altar of Baal and made it a latrine to this day.
And now it's the first time that we have that we can identify the story from the Bible in Tel Lachish with the toilets.
These pieces offer proof of the Bible's telling of what Hezekiah did.
With the removing the horns, canceling the Holy of the Holies of the gate shrine that we found, and the toilet make it impure.
In part of the excavation, they dug through more than a foot of destruction and found arrowheads and slingshots that, according to Ganor, confirms the conquest of Assyrian King Sennacherib.
It's like to take the Bible in your hand.
Ganor added the Bible can stand on its own.
We don't need to prove the Bible. We have the Bible and we have archaeologists. If it's matching, it's matching. Here in our story, it's matching.
John Wagi, CBN News, Jerusalem.
오늘 준비한 소식은 여기까지입니다. 저는 다음 주에 다시 찾아오겠습니다. 시청해주신 여러분 고맙습니다.